Daejeon. 김진수의 발끝까지 터졌어요. The header is good, and it's the time defender John Tae-wook, and eventually Korea have broken the deadlock.
You're listening to the K-League United podcast, proud partner of Football Nation Radio.
Hello, 안녕하세요. Ryan Walters back for a very rare and happy to be back in the studio live show, joined by Matthew Binns.
Hello.
And Pete Hampshire.
Hi, lads. How we doing?
Doing all right. Decided to get the dust off the old Kim Do-hoon bunker. Let people see it behind us here for those that are watching live on social media right now. We figured, it's time to bring these things back.
Especially down in Gimje, we need this kind of entertainment. It's all right for you big city boys.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that we might also need to cheer Binns up a little bit because, what a weekend it was for Matthew Binns. There's a lovely photo of you online in your Kim Jin-soo kit. I think there was like one tear rolling down your eye as Jeonbuk lost to Seongnam over the weekend.
Yeah, I had gone to see Michael Redmond's new apartment, socially distanced, of course. I was on the other side of the room, and for some reason he had a very interesting playlist that just seemed to get just crueler and crueler as the results went. I mean, it must be his usual Soul Elam playlist, but yeah, Elton John. That's why they call it the blues. He even played what I can only describe as an ironic "We Are the Champions" at full time. And it was. I'm sure he said it was on shuffle. I don't know.
Totally believe that. Well, that is one of the many things we're going to be talking about this week. We have to start there, or so we thought, because when we made the rundown, we thought, surely that's where we're going to start. And then today, because we're recording live on Tuesday, Hwang is out at Daejeon. We'll talk about it. That's where we're going to start because we have to start there. And then we'll discuss the shocker in Seongnam, which is why we have Matthew here. This is 2 weeks in a row that we get to have like the anti-gloat of Matthew Binns.
I was going to say, do I only get on this podcast now when Jeonbuk lose? I remember the glory years when it was just all smugness. It's just wallowing in misery.
Yeah, I'm doing here to counterbalance. Pre-gloat today for the ahead of the Gwangju Jeonbuk game this weekend.
I'm not on it next week. I mean, if we lose next week, I'm not on it.
That's it. Just done at that point. And speaking of things that could be changed next week, the Great Escape is on. It's back. Thank you, Gangwon. The Incheon United Great Escape is back. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the battle for the top 6 because Suwon Samsung Blue Wings, the teams right above Incheon, could potentially be in the top 6 like next week. That's how intense this battle is right now. And speaking of Suwon, we will be discussing the super match coming up this weekend with FC Seoul hosting the Suwon Samsung Blue Wings for the first time this year, the first time in 2020 because of the year we've all had. Then we do have a mailbag, as always. Some mailbag questions came in on social before this recording, and if you're watching live right now, go ahead and get those in on the comments, which we are monitoring throughout. We've got Dan Croydon on 2 different platforms. One just says a surprise live stream. One says moo ha 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 ha. So, okay.
No idea what he's referring to with that laughter.
No idea at all. It definitely isn't talking about the title race. But yeah, go ahead and get those in throughout the show. We'll try to get to them as and when we can. But yeah, gentlemen, let's go ahead and let's talk about the topic of the day. We have to start here. Hwang Sun-hong is out as Daejeon Hana Citizen manager after just 18 matches at the helm. They have 8 wins, 6 draws, and 4 losses. Just 1 win in 5, but they also only have 1 loss in that time, and that 1 win came this past weekend. It was a last-minute winner against Bucheon 1995. So, Pete, I'll come to you first because we don't want to keep Binns wallowing in misery for too long. But what happened? What?
Yeah, you don't often see it, do you? It's last minute winner, the euphoria of it, and then especially against Bucheon in the top 6 side. With Jeju United to come this weekend as well, a big game away at Jeju. obviously they hadn't won in 4 beforehand, but it's not like they lost many of those either. They weren't on the hand of any surprise batterings or anything.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to assume that they've got someone lined up. Otherwise, why would you wait to sack someone after a victory?
Yeah, it's odd timing indeed. And I mean, as somebody watching a lot of K2 this year, they've looked out of sorts at times, but I mean, to me, you have to wonder what's going on in the background there for a manager with his resume to be out after just 18 matches. But I mean, Matthew, are we going to see him in Korea again? Because before this, he almost got Seoul relegated. And if we're just going to call it what it is, and we should, he destroyed what FC Seoul was. He did. They won the championship. He took over after Chae Young-soo. They won the championship in 2016. Sure, you can put a little asterisk next to it. Okay, I saw that. Yeah, but that next year, they didn't look the same. 2018, he almost got him relegated. And now, to try to repair his reputation, he has this massive budget. Hana Bank come in, and he has the biggest budget in K2, I would assume, and is out halfway through the season, a little over halfway through the season. Are we going to see him again?
Well, I don't know, because as you said, it certainly doesn't look good with his last 2 jobs. But I think you've really got to kind of see him as 2 very different situations. I mean, Seoul, it looked like he had total control and the destruction was his own undoing. But Daejeon, I mean, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes at Daejeon, but you look at Hana Citizen, they want promotion in their first year. Yeah. And the pressure that comes with that, there can be no room for error. And I'm not 100% sure this is the correct decision. I'm not saying he was doing a good job. Don't get me wrong here, but I don't think he was doing a bad one either. I don't really know how many of the players were players he wanted either. I mean, we saw the players he wanted to get rid of at Seoul. We saw how he won the title with Pohang. And then you see the players that Hana Citizen have brought in, and yeah, they're very good players and things, but these aren't the players you naturally associate with Hwang Sung-hong teams. I wonder how much influence there is from the board of directors there. But yeah, it's a different task. There's very wealthy backers, and they have to deliver. And if he's not delivering, then he has to go. His methods, whether they work or whether they don't work, they take time. And Daejeon Hana Citizen, they're operating on a very short time frame to turn that club into a success. And perhaps it was I think they chose him as a headline, as a marquee manager, but he wasn't the right style of manager for this kind of situation. And he probably would have had to go eventually, if not now. But as Pete said, they must have somebody lined up to do this now, because otherwise it's just irresponsible to get rid of him.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense right now. They're sitting 3rd in the playoffs as of right now. They're only 5 points off of Jeju United at the top. They're 3 points off of Suwon, because lucky Suwon, managed to get a draw against the Dragons over the weekend. I don't want to talk about that. That's we're stopping that one right there. But
our group chat was lively on the weekend.
It was fine until it wasn't. I was so ready to gloat this week with that win. It would have been great, but whatever. Anyway, so Suwon's only 3 points ahead of them right now. And Jeju, you can't really say that they're out of reach. In K2, 5 points really isn't that much, but I guess that's part of the concern as well, because you go down to Jeonnam in 6th place right now, and they're only 5 points behind Daejeon. They're only 1 point behind Gyeongnam for that final playoff spot. So, I mean, it's really tight. And Daejeon, if they're not careful, they could slide out of the playoff spot right now. But again, they're only 5 points off the lead. It is very, very surprising timing from them. And definitely watch this space. Well, Paul's on it. Paul will be on it like crazy. So hopefully we can find out what's going on there, but a very big surprise, and we'll have more as it develops. But we're going to move on to something else that was quite the surprise over the weekend, and that was Seongnam FC's 2-0 victory over Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors. The first time in 5 years that Seongnam pulled off a victory over the North Jeolla side, and the first time in 2 years, Matthew, that Jeonbuk has lost back-to-back league games. Was this a situation that it just went wrong for Jeonbuk, or did it just go right for Seongnam?
I'm going to obviously straddle the fence here and say a little bit of both. I mean,
Sure.
I think we should really begin by praising how good Seongnam were.
Mm-hmm.
They were by far the better side over 90 minutes, and they fully deserved the 3 points. They continued to attack. Even after scoring 2 goals, they were still pushing forward. They were still taking advantage of this Jeonbuk side that just seemed shell-shocked, unorganized in the centre of midfield. Not even down the centre, just everywhere. The defence just crumbled to pieces for Jeonbuk. But first, let's go back to Seongnam. Let's just talk about what they did. So Seongnam, they set up in a formation that caught the eye. It's not the first time they set up in it. They set up in
It's a
3-3-3-1 formation. And if you look
Standard
at the graphics, it's more akin to like something from the movie 300 or something, the way they lined the soldiers up or something. Yeah, it was bizarre, but it worked. And yeah, they had Kim Hyung-sung spearheading the attack with Na Sang-ho tucked just behind, and Yoon-soo and Park Soo-il on the wings respectively. Jeonbuk's formation, they made several changes to the defeat against Gangwon, and I don't think all of those changes were warranted, but Jose Moraes has done sweeping changes despite having no games midweek. So again, it's not really for fitness issues. It seems first and foremost, Lee Young was not deemed fit to play. He wasn't even on the bench, so he was replaced by Chae Chul-sun at right back. As a second come first choice defender, Lee Ju-young retained his spot on the left. Cho Kyu-sung started up top, so we'd been praising Lee Sung-yeon, who had been doing well last weekend despite his age, and he was out the squad altogether, replaced by Cho Kyu-sung up front, with Gustavo and Modu Barrow reduced to the bench. Perhaps the tactic there was to go for a bit of a later impact, some later impact subs. Jeonbuk had the best opening chance. It looked like they might get things going. Kim Bo-kyung, he skimmed the woodwork from a free kick that was just outside the box. But that was it, really. And then Seongnam just grew in confidence. They took the lead on about the half-hour mark. Park Soo-il, he was moving down the right to collect a cross that was sent from the opposite flank. He just moved a couple of steps inwards, got a shot away. There was nobody towards him. Lee Ju-young should have been marking him, but I kind of understand why Lee Ju-young wasn't there right at that moment, but he should have got closer to him before he got the shot away, perhaps. The post, the shot, it hit the post and came straight out to Yoon-soo. And I mean, great reaction by him to get it in. The ball was, it came straight out at him, not an easy height either.
I was to say, I think that's a little bit more difficult. He's obviously in the right position, but yeah, like you say, that it is at a weird height and just smacks it, just hits it really well. Yeah. And Yoon-soo, there's a highlight package out on Twitter for the job that he did over the weekend. Right place, right time, a couple of times in this one. And like you say, in the note of praising Seongnam, I think he had a tremendous match.
Definitely. And he was instrumental to the second goal as well. So they came out in the second half. Seongnam, they continued to push forward to try and kill off the game. And he just turned Chae Chul-sun, who was standing at right back, and clearly this isn't the Chae Chul-sun of a few seasons ago. He was just caught napping completely. And Yoon-soo just flew down this left wing and yeah, he just pulled it back to Park Daejeon, who was on the edge of the area, and 2-0.
He had so much time, Park Daejeon, as well, didn't he, to finish that? I mean, he was pulling his trigger for about 10 seconds on the edge of the box.
Yeah, just making sure that everything was exactly where it needed to be.
Yeah, and then Seongnam, they were still attacking, but it was getting a bit feisty in the tackle, I think. They did get a red card. Now, I don't think it was a red card. It was Kim Hyun-sung.
I was going to ask about that.
It was a foul. He made contact. It wasn't intentional. It was just, he was going to kick the ball. Jeonbuk player just nipped in and he ended up kicking the back of the Jeonbuk player's legs. That's all it was. And he was already on a yellow, got his second yellow, dismissed.
Sure. But I mean, the thing worth noting there for me is that this is in the 69th minute. First of all, nice. But also, that's plenty of time for Jeonbuk to come back in this one, isn't it? Normally, yeah. I think the dismissal would have perhaps given a normal-looking Jeonbuk a lifeline, but this showing was below average for the champions. What few shots Jeonbuk actually were able to pull off were either wide or just straight towards the goalkeeper, often tame headers. Again, Gustavo didn't have the best day. I'm beginning to worry. Now, that's 2 games where he really hasn't shown up.
For the most part, though, they just simply struggled to create, and I think that was down to Seongnam's organisation at the backs. They livened up a bit with Barrow, who came on midway through the second half, but they were just often caught frustrated, and they just lacked the creativity to pull Seongnam apart. They were clumsy as well in midfield. They ceded possession. And one of the chances was Takehiro Kunimoto just attempting a back heel and just gave it straight to a Seongnam player. They just looked genuinely poor, and luckily, Gwangju handed him a lifeline on Sunday.
Yes, indeed, they did. Yeah, Gwangju. Well, yeah, we'll talk about them in a little bit because we'll talk about the battle for the top 6 where Gwangju is featuring right now. But let's move on and let's talk about the other. We'll say the other main event of the weekend, which is Incheon United just doing Incheon things, with Stefan Magosa getting a 15-minute hat trick. Incheon hasn't scored more than a single goal in memory, basically. And they go out, they not only get more than one, they get 2, they get 3, and he does it in 15 minutes. And then Gangwon comes back in this thing. Pete, this one finished 3-2. Is this a good sign for Incheon? Is this a bad sign for Gangwon? Where do you weigh in on this one?
I think it's certainly a good sign for fans of the K-League because it makes it nice and tight at the bottom again. We're worrying with Incheon's defeat the other week that, we might peter out a bit, but certainly not. Incheon, that Magosa hat trick, I think the first one, the penalty, wasn't a penalty for me. For me, that was it was a handball really close to his body. The attacker flicked it up and he hardly moved his arm at all. The second one was all made from a man who has really impressed me in recent weeks at Incheon. That's Jeon Hak on the wing. He made a lung bursting run forward. Beautiful crossing for Magosa. And I mean, that header was the perfect place to put it in the net where the keeper couldn't save it. And the third, just cheek, wasn't it?
Oh, lovely little back heel. Yeah, if you haven't seen that one yet, that's out on Twitter. That I think that's got to be the goal of the round for me. Just a nice little back heel. But I mean, also
the thing you mentioned Gangwon as well. It was quite. I know they've been up and down, inconsistent, but it was uncharacteristic at the weekend how the defense just fell apart because they've been losing games in an entertaining fashion. And we know you say every week, Ryan, that you like watching Gangwon, but they just seem to crumble. And Magosa, they let him do what he wanted, which surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say what's going on at Gangwon. I feel like, we've been saying it all year. They just needed 2, maybe 3 more pieces. I think they needed a big center back, which is very strange because they got rid of one in Valentino. So I think could have helped stabilize this back line. I think they needed somebody there and they needed somebody up top. But even with that, they still got 2 pretty quickly back in this one. And to me, that's the most encouraging thing if you're Incheon, because if you get out to a 3-0 lead, you get these 3 goals in a burst like that. Okay, maybe Gangwon hangs their head. They just give up, whatever. It's that kind of season. But they didn't. Gangwon came back in this thing, and we know Gangwon can score goals. And Incheon held on. And to me, especially with the matches that they have coming up this weekend, namely as well, they go down to Busan. Incheon does. And that's a sign of encouragement for me because they had to fight for this one. And they've had to fight for all of their wins, obviously. But this one was a situation where I think this would have been a backbreaker for the season if they would have given up a 3-0 lead. I think they're just done at that point. And they held it off.
Yeah, if you're losing a 3-goal lead with 20 minutes to go, then you kind of think, well, it's just not happening for us this year, is it? It's time. It's finally time to go down.
We can finally go back to Gwangyang Stadium is what they were thinking.
Me and Matthew were actually on the highlights, weren't we, on that day? And we were like the Chuckle Brothers passing it over to each other. It was like, "Do you want that goal? Do you want that goal? Who's doing this?" It was fantastic.
Fantastic coordination to get them out in the right order because they all just appeared at like the same time. Like, hang on, it's like piecing them all together. But what a match, really. I think as well we've got to give some credit to the Incheon manager. Cho Sung-hwan. I mean, he got a bit unfairly maligned a bit when he was at Jeju. Yeah, because I think people remember him going down, remember Jeju going down, but he was, he got them into the Champions League as well. He was in
and
Champions
they were
League 2 years in
entertaining
a row.
there.
Yeah, he's a decent manager. He just had, tapered off at the end, and that Jeju side, it was, proved unrecoverable in the end. But yeah, he seems to be doing a good job, and he's certainly got them playing together again. And let's hope that they can make it a bit of a fight down there and keep it entertaining until the end of the year.
Yeah, indeed. Because like we said earlier, there's a lot going on in the middle of the table, which we're going to take a really quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about the battle for the top 6. We'll be right back.
FNR is a revolutionary football-dedicated digital platform, the first of its kind in Australia. It provides a 24/7 live online radio platform experience, podcast hub, and acts as a content provider for TV, radio, and digital. Having reached millions of listeners and football fans since launching, FNR is accessible worldwide via its website or app, providing a platform to discuss, debate, and celebrate the world game. We are your voice of football, FNR Football Nation Radio.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by Pete Hampshire.
Hello.
And Matthew Binns.
Hello.
It's a little stranger doing that when I can actually see you guys for the whole time. But anyway, we're back. And we alluded to this a lot in the first segment there. And I mean, to me, there are a lot of things wrong with this season. But we've got a battle at the top and the bottom, and just this massive battle going on for the top 6 right now. We have Gangwon, Gwangju, Seongnam, and Seoul all on 21 points right now, separated by goals scored. Busan is on 20. And if you go just a little bit lower, even Suwon, who's fighting off a relegation battle right now, is on 17 points. They're only 4 points behind the top 6. Crazier things have happened. This is just absolutely madness right now. And I'm loving it because there are so many matches coming up this weekend, which we're going to get into. But before we get into any of that, we did have a question come in on Twitter before we came live. And also, there's been a very lively conversation going on Facebook right now. We'll talk about that when we get to the actual mailbag. But I'll just say our Daegu columnist, Jung Moo-yeol, came in with some very interesting tidbits about the Hwang situation. We'll get back to that when we get to the mailbag. So stay tuned for that. But for now, on Twitter, Osri Furman came in, and Pete, I'll give you this one. He's asking, do you think Daegu are in danger of losing their top 6 status given the form they are in right now?
My short answer would be no, but I think my explanation for that would be elements of bad luck in the last 2 games. They've been involved in classic encounters twice against Pohang and Gwangju, where their defense has been just as bad as the opposition, but they've managed to concede more goals. It was who could concede most in both of those games, I think. And Lee Byung-gun, I think he'll obviously change his system a bit this weekend because they've got Ulsan away. I doubt he'll go in such a gung-ho manner away at Ulsan. Also, I think the teams around them have got to play each other.
Yep.
So if you get in there before the split, then that obviously helps Daegu's cause. And also there's only 3 games left before the split. So a few things in Daegu's favour. They're missing Jo Jinu this weekend, so there'll be another shuffle round at the back, which in the last couple of games has obviously been a real problem for them. But I don't think so. No, I think they'll make the top 6.
Speaking of Jung Moo-yeol, he is in the comments saying we're doomed. So he disagrees. I think mainly because Daegu have lost 4 out of their last 5. That one in the middle there was a draw. So winless in 5. It's not looking great for them. But like you say, they do have a 5-point cushion over Gangwon in 6th. I think it would take quite a bit of a collapse, and there's enough talent there for them to make their way back in.
And speaking of Moo-yeol, he's actually in the process of writing a piece for KLeagueUnited.com on Daegu, going a bit deeper and more articulate into Lee Byung-gun's tactics than I can.
Okay, nice. Look at that seamless plugging there, Pete. Well done. Well done. All right. Let's move on to a question from one of our patrons, Charlotte Patterson. She's asking, do you think FC Seoul have improved? And they're right in the middle of this, and we are going to talk about the super match. So I'll be brief here, and I'll just say yes and no. I'll say that they won 3 straight, which was very impressive. It kind of got their season going again. I think the Sangju win was especially impressive there, but they've scored just once since then. And this has been the problem with FC Seoul. I mean, since Daejeon left, really, Pesic was there and Pesic did a good job, but there were issues behind the scenes there. Pesic is no longer with the club, and I think that was a massive mistake. It was a swing and a miss on Adriano. We a lot of us, myself included, thought that would work out. It definitely has not. He doesn't even see the field anymore, never mind score a goal. So to me, I cannot believe they didn't figure out how to get one striker in this window. Obviously, they had a big outlay on Ki Sung-young, and fantastic seeing him back in K-League. I think whatever they had to do there to get him in is the right decision. But you can't convince me that there isn't somebody already in Korea that could do a job for this club. And I don't get it. So to me, have they improved? Sure, a little bit. Matt, you look like you got something on this.
No, I kind of agree. Yeah, they have improved, but I think it's more of a band-aid rather than really fixing the foundations of the club. I think they need just a complete overhaul in the off-season. They need to actually decide on where they're going with the manager. Are they going to continue to back this caretaker manager, which I don't think they will, personally. I think that they will probably just go for a complete overhaul. I think, in this season, in terms of this season, they are looking better, but this isn't a permanent fix at all, I don't think.
No, the only thing that could really fix them is getting in Win Kwang Hai in the off season. So
keep
make
pushing.
It happen. Just make it happen. I know you're listening, FC Seoul, whoever's in charge of things there. Anyway, let's move on. Because there's a lot coming up this weekend for this battle for the top 6. Just really quickly, we're not going to be able to go through every single match in detail. That's what the previews are for. But on Saturday, we do have Gwangju versus Jeonbuk. That's a very early kickoff. That's at 4. Ulsan and Daegu. That's the way Daegu's been conceding and scoring lately, and the way Ulsan likes to score. Get your eyeballs on that one. That one should be fun. That'll be at 7. Also, kicking off at the exact same time on Saturday will be Sangju Sangmu hosting Seongnam FC. On Sunday, it gets started at 5:30 local time with the super match. Paul and I will be there for that one, and that is obviously Seoul versus Suwon. Gangwon versus Pohang kicks off at 7, and at the exact same time will be Busan iPark versus Incheon United. That's the weekend ahead. And gentlemen, when it comes to this battle for the top 6, which of those matches are you picking? And Matt, I'll start with you.
Well, there's only one we can pick with me and Peter both on this show, and that's the the Clash of the Titans down in Gwangju. Jeonbuk make the trip south to fight an in-form goal-scoring machine. And I'm sure Peter's got more to say about Gwangju's actual team news. But one thing I did want to point out is if Jeonbuk lose this weekend, it'll be the first time they would have lost 3 league games in a row since November 2013, when they lost to Ulsan, Pohang, and Seoul. Which no offense here, but that's far more respectable than Gangwon, Seongnam, and Gwangju. Sorry, I'm just laughing at Peter's face. He's right there in a Gwangju.
He's right there. I mean, yeah.
And they might do it. That's the most worrying thing about it. I was watching Ulsan versus Gwangju, and I'm sure we're going to touch on that in a bit. But I was watching Ulsan Gwangju this weekend, and Willian got a red card. I was like, and then obviously I don't encourage dismissals, but when
when it helps your team,
get as many of them off as possible. I was hoping like Felipe might go down with something, and then there was another tackle as well that probably should have been looked at. Actually, quite a dangerous tackle that went down, which is doing rounds on Twitter as well. I'm all for retroactive punishment on that as well. If they can get it in before Saturday.
I know you're being checky. I know you're being checky, but Dan Croydon had this out on Twitter. It is a horror tackle.
I mean, I'm making light of it, but it is terrible. It deserves.
You're making light of the situation, not the tackle.
We'll
the bail you out on that one.
Definitely see it.
From behind, gets the player's leg. It's really bad, and I do think that that's one that I actually do think should be looked at. But we'll move on to you here, Pete. What's the match that you're watching this weekend?
So in person, I'm going to the game in Gwangju.
Okay.
To watch a Willian-less side take on.
I thought we'd come back then. Don't do that to me, mate.
If you sat next to me in the stands with my Barnsley contract, that would be all. But the side I chose this weekend was who we just talked about before, Gangwon. I mean, they just lost at home to Incheon on the side at the bottom, and this weekend they've got Pohang at home again. With those sides around them, if they lose to a side who they could, reasonably lose to in Pohang, a top side, then they could go down as far as 9th, I think. So a huge weekend for Kim Byung-soo and Gangwon.
Yeah, and worth noting there that, interestingly enough, Pohang haven't won in Gangwon since 2013. So history's on their side for the Bears there, for Gangwon. Just make it entertaining. I don't care anymore. Just make it entertaining for me, Gangwon. You're gonna do whatever you want to do. You got great kits. I just want to see goals. So that's all I want there. Anyway, let's move on. The match that I'm picking this weekend. Allergies, sorry. The match I'm picking this weekend is Busan versus Incheon, because the Great Escape, I'm not going to stop saying it. I don't care if it's cliche. The Great Escape, it's on. And this is the first time these teams are meeting in Busan since 2015. Back in the day, Incheon won 2-1 on that day. But United are in really great form right now, having won 3 out of 4 compared to Busan's 1-4. So I mean, I know that Incheon fans like to protect themselves as often as they can. And last weekend, there were a lot of folks saying that was their best chance at a win before the split. But I mean, given how Busan's been playing lately, I think Incheon's got a chance in this one. And if they win combined with a Suwon loss, then they're tied with Suwon on points. And then we got a real interesting split coming up, which, let's just go ahead and hop into Suwon's match, because it's the super match. It's going to be, again, at 5:30 this Sunday. And as it goes, so does Suwon's winless streak against FC Seoul in the league. Suwon haven't beaten Seoul in league play since April 18th, 2015. So that's a thread between that and the Busan Incheon game there. That's 17 league matches the Blue Wings have gone without a win over their very, very bitter rivals. Notably, I keep saying league matches because they did get a very famous FA Cup win over Seoul in that amount of time. So there's a little bit for them to hang their hat on, but I think this has gone on for a really, really long time. And luckily for those of us watching, there have been some really entertaining matches this year and in years past. 3-3 this year, last time they met. Suwon was up 3-1. But then Cho Young-uk and Ko Kwang-min equalized, much to Matthew Bin's dismay, who was on highlights that night. And just
it was a rough night.
Just trying to keep up with that, and Gangwon Busan being 6-4. So that was a fun one for you that night. But entertaining super match, which I think the league always needs an entertaining super match, and we got another one last year in 2019 that finished 4-2. Osmar and Pesic each had a brace in that one, and it was up and down the field. It was a really entertaining match. And Matthew, I'll throw this over to you here. Seoul are winless in 3. A win could put them in the top 6. Suwon come in 1 win in 6, and they're just barely above Incheon right now. So how are you setting up for this one if you're the brand new Suwon Blue Wings manager?
Yeah, well, if you're watching this live, then earlier today or Tuesday, for those listening on repeat, Park Kun-na has signed as Suwon's full-time replacement. He actually leaves his coaching role at Chae Kang-hee's Shanghai Shenhua, and he takes the reins of a club for the first time since his short stint in charge of Seoul Ilan back in 2016. I mean, he's a bit of a club legend in a way. He's one of the founding members of Suwon Blue Wings. He joined upon their establishment and he stayed with them up until 2006, minus a few months overseas on loan. He's also been involved in some of Suwon's more glorious achievements over the years. Mm-hmm. So, that could be a boost in some respects. But he is coaching. He's also had coaching roles at Suwon in the past and at the national team between 2013 and 2016. Speaking about his actual managerial style, what we've got to go on anyway. The last 6 months of the season in 2016, he took over at Seoul Eland, taking over from Martin Rennie. The club actually finished sixth, finding form in late October that year. They actually won 6 on the bounce. Prior to then, he had actually rang in a number of changes and who can maintain the inconsistency that Martin Rennie had previously resigned for. But he moved drastically away from Rennie's approach and he went more defensive just to stop the rot. I think we could possibly see him trying to implement something like this at Suwon at short notice. Yeah. During his time at Seoul Eland, he was mainly playing a 4-2-3-1 formation with 2 defensive midfielders, often staying back to help cover the back 4. I mean, I don't want to see that kind of super match because we've seen too many of them. But as a Suwon, if you're a Suwon fan, you may be worried right now of the precarious situation you find your club in, and any point would be highly valuable to move away from Incheon's side growing in confidence. I think just speaking of the actual move itself, I think it's very, very bold from Suwon.
Yeah.
They are in desperate need of a managerial boost. And the only evidence we have of him shows that he needed time to implement any kind of methods before the rewards could be reaped. It probably would have actually been better at the start of next season rather than right now. I guess, luckily for him, it's behind closed doors. It's behind closed doors in a way. So there's no one Suwon banner protest. There's no Suwon away fans.
Yeah, they won't be surrounding the bus afterwards.
No, I think it's going to be a hard one for him. I don't see him potentially going for a win in Seoul. I think he's going to set up to stop the rot and keep Seoul out. And I hope there can be some kind of entertainment in the super match.
Pete, what's going to save this one for you? Who or what are you kind of keying in on for the super match this weekend?
Well, it'd be a perfect opportunity, surely, for Ki Sung-young to start the game. I mean, a super match at home. Shame it's not in front of your fans. But what more perfect opportunity? He's had 2 games, 30 minutes off the bench. He looked good in the first one, I thought. And then last weekend, it didn't really affect the game too much. But surely him in the centre of the park, and just behind Han Sung-gyu as well, who I think has had a great August. So hopefully he can continue that into the end of the season. That could be a great spine for Seoul.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you'll be shocked. A 4-4-2 sounds pretty good for this team right now, to be honest. Like you say, Han Sung-gyu going up a little bit higher and then Ki kind of pulling the strings from behind.
I knew our English influence would rub off on you in the end. Ryan Walters wants a 4-4-2.
That's right. I mean, the only issue that I would have with that, though, is what strike partnership do you go with if you're Seoul? I think Cho Young-uk has looked great in stretches, but I think he controls the game really well from the wing. So I don't know if you want him to play as centrally as the 4-4-2 would kind of demand out of him. Last weekend against Busan, he was in acres of space almost the entire second half, and they just weren't getting him the ball. But we've seen him be a difference maker out wide there. So I think that would be one of the shames. But I mean, that's kind of the thing. FC Seoul do need a little bit of an overhaul. It's like we were talking about earlier, because that midfield is just so clogged up with talent. And this is another area where I don't understand what their strategy was this transfer window, because they had so much midfield talent and such a lack of depth up top. It can't be that hard. just talk to another K-League club. Be like, hey, your midfield kind of sucks. We need a striker. Let's make this happen. You can't convince me that there isn't a club that couldn't have made that happen. But anyway, for this weekend, I think it'll depend on how Suwon sets up. If they sit deep and they allow the midfielders for Seoul to really get involved, I think that's going to be the battle to watch. And like you say, Pete, I think this is the weekend. This is the match that you want to see Ki Sung-young out there starting. I think, okay, pull him at the 60th minute then. He doesn't have to go 90, but see what he can do from the off. Go out and get a goal in the first half. Don't set up not to lose this one. Suwon is on the ropes right now. Go out there, score a goal, punch him in the teeth early, and make this an entertaining game for us, please. But I mean, really though, I think that is their best way to win, because I think, unlike Incheon, who we've seen really fighting back recently, I think Suwon hasn't seemed to have that fight in them. So we'll see what happens. And again, Paul and I will be on the ground covering this one live. So if you've got any questions or anything about that, get them in the comments right now, because we are about to hop into the mailbag. But get them in the comments now, or get them into the comments over the weekend, and we'll get to them then. But as of right now, we are going to take a quick break and then come back and hop into the Olgi Luis mailbag. We'll be right back.
Olgi Luis is your neighborhood British bar and cafe located in the Old Giro district of Seoul. Decorated in old English antiques and furniture for a true homely feel, you can enjoy homemade scones, cakes and afternoon tea during the day, and traditional British favorites like beef stew, English ale, and a fine selection of wines at night. Available for private parties or simply an evening out, Olgi Luis is sure to become your favorite neighborhood pub. Be sure to mention K-League United at the bar during your visit, and you'll get 10% off your bill.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by Pete Hampshire.
Hello.
And a very smiley Matthew Binns.
Sorry, I couldn't hold it together. Hello. I really love that advert. I really love doing that advert. That's the first time I've actually had to sit here and listen to it while we're doing the pod recording. I really do love it. You should go to Olgi Luis. It's fantastic food, fantastic drinks, and that's a fantastic advert as well. But yes.
Okay, I'll save you for a second. We alluded to this earlier.
Drop the mic.
Get it? Oh, Binns. Okay. All right. Anyway, I wanted to go back to something that came in the comments while we were recording live here. We mentioned it earlier. Jung Muyol, our Daegu columnist, said that it might be worth visiting what Hwang said after the win over Suwon. This is after they won the game. Hwang said, "I wondered what operating staff and the board did today for the win. And we need everybody to do their own job." So that's certainly a way to get fired. I mean, apparently, but it would seem that there was definitely not a great communication going on behind the scenes there. So that sheds a little bit more light on why Hwang Sun-hong may have been so unceremoniously given his marching orders there, which, going back to what you were saying, Pete, I wonder if that plays into if they had somebody lined up or not. And actually, Muyol's correcting me here. That was after the Suwon loss. Sorry, after the Suwon loss. That's what he's saying.
But yeah,
thank you, Muyol.
You would think
live fact checking. This is great. This is like a CNN debate.
With such few games left this season, you would think they've got someone lined up, unless it really has just gone so sour behind the scenes. You don't know, do you? But
they're just, they're going to get Chae Young-soo next. They're just going to keep going for FC Seoul managers and see what they can do and get in there. But anyway, I think we have a couple of questions somewhat related to this in the mailbag. And Matthew has regained himself. He's picked up his microphone.
Yeah, I'm back in it.
He's ready to go.
Right,
what do we got?
Okay, we've got Asri Furman making his second appearance on the pod this evening. He's got a question saying, with Adam Taggart linked to an exit, how do you think the Blue Wings will fare in the ACL, even against JDT?
Well, I wouldn't say even against. They've already lost to JDT in ACL, and I expect Suwon to struggle. I expect them to do quite poorly in ACL because and to be honest, I just don't think that's where their focus should be. I don't see any reason for them to put a lot of emphasis in the ACL, given what's going on in the league right now. I mean,
yeah, a lot of it's going to depend on scheduling, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
and where and when it's going to be played.
Yeah, we still don't have confirmation on where groups E and F are going to be playing in the East. It's all up in the air. There were also reports here in Korean media that the date is going to be pushed back from October to November. Haven't heard anything or seen anything official from AFC yet. So as with everything else in 2020, it's undecided.
You never know. You could have a team that's just been relegated to the K-League 2, and then next week, let's go and have a jaunt for a Champions League tournament against Vissel Kobe and teams of that ilk.
I'm all for it. Speaking of being all for it, I do think I think this works for everybody. If Taggart can can get a move and get into a club that I think wants to play a style that fits him a little bit better, and Suwon can make some money, yeah, sure, go for it. I mean, it's kind of like we were talking about with Kim Jin-soo moving. If it makes sense for everybody involved, then you got to do it.
If Taggart does leave, then the other striking options at Suwon this season have been Kerpic, who I think looks decent in spells this year, but he's only got 2 goals. And then your other option is Kim Gun-hee, who's only scored once this season. So it does leave them with a hole up front.
Well, look, I think they see the allure of K-League 2. They listen to the podcast. They know that it's a great party, and they just want Suwon, the city of Suwon, to have the joy of having a team in both divisions. So they're going to go ahead and take Suwon FC's place next year.
How very kind of them,
isn't it?
Okay. Well, speaking of Suwon, we have Suwon's favourite son in the mailbag. We have Scott Whitelock. He's asking, he says, there's been a lot of talk on the pod recently about the battle for the ACL places, and he puts in brackets, playing devil's advocate. If the 2020 ACL was unable to be completed, should they stay with the teams that qualified in 2019 for ACL 2021, or should they use the 2020 table? What do we think?
It's a really interesting question, that, because it would have all sorts of permutations if they did stick with the 2019 ones. You could even end up with some legal battles, couldn't you? You'd be straight into it, Bins, with Man City and everything. You'd be loving it.
I get one more team to cast, and I get a free 6-inch Subway sandwich or something. You know.
Yeah. For me, I think you just go with the teams that finish in those positions this season.
I mean, I think there might be some interesting ways around it. I think what you could do is you could have it's not ideal. Nothing about this situation is ideal. COVID has destroyed so much, and football is not immune to what's happening in the rest of the world. But to me, the easiest solution would be to have some sort of playoff, playoff. I mentioned it again, but something within each league to kind of figure out what the teams are going to be that are represented. So, if we've got Jeonbuk there finishing second and they get in that way after winning last year, well, then that's the same spot. So, I mean, you might not even have too many different teams. And I guess if you do, then the lowest seeded team from 2019 faces the lowest seeded team of 2020. I don't know how you would do it. To me, that makes sense. That seems like a way that each of the individual leagues could take care of business and then have the format remain the same.
I mean,
not
simple.
For Bins.
No, double the intake, massive cup knockout tournament.
Sign me up for that. Make it a
That's
single
leg.
month-long tournament.
Oh, yeah, that's what I want. 8 K-League teams. Exactly, still don't get in, but suddenly Seoul are back in with a chance.
I mean.
Oh, they are. It would be, wouldn't it? But yeah, no. Anyway, but Gangwon might finally get it. Anyway, but yeah, it's
but really though, Simon Hill wrote about this recently, about the idea of continental tournaments like this maybe needing to switch styles, and maybe ACL needs to be a single event. Which personally, I love this idea. I love the idea of Champions League being in a shorter time frame in a centralized location, maybe a couple of different locations, something like that, but. The midweek travel, especially here in Korea, for K-League teams to go down to Australia on Wednesday and then come back and have an away game on the weekend, or even a home game. The scheduling is usually favorable for them for that, but that's a lot to ask. And also, I think it's a lot to ask fans, casual fans especially, to keep following something that's happening across the continent for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Whereas if you can get everybody together and you can tell all of these teams and these players' stories in a shorter amount of time and get the flavor of these other leagues and these other players, sign me up for that. I mean, that's one of the things that we love about the World Cup. So to me, I'll go ahead and agree with you there, Ben. Let's just make it one big knockout tournament. Sign me up.
Maybe that would be a good idea in, a year of coronavirus, because if you did that in a normal year in a centralized location, then, the home fans would miss out, wouldn't they, on the 3 group stage home games. The fans would miss out in that sense. But maybe in this strange year, something like that could work.
And yeah, we keep saying 2020. I don't think ACL 2021 is going to be too tremendously unaffected. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, interesting question.
Okay, next in the mailbag, we have Charlotte Patterson on Twitter, and she asks, what or who do you think would improve Daegu's side? Goals aren't a concern, but is defence the issue? And well, I believe if Jung Muyol is keeping track, he might well get in his answer in the comments while we're hashing out ours. Peter, what do you think Daegu would need?
Yeah, I mentioned it a few times on this podcast. You know, if you look at Daegu's back three, it's all 22-year-olds on it. George was a bit younger, I think. Even just an experienced centre back would transform them massively. I mean, if you do that well-made comparison between Daegu and Barnsley, then one experienced centre back has transformed the season, and that can happen. You lead from the back, and it just works its way up the whole pitch. The midfield, Cezinha feels more comfortable to be more expressive, and it works its way up the pitch.
To me, I think you could stop playing with a 3-back. I mean, I think that asks a lot out of some young defenders. I think there's a lot of communication and there's a lot of gaps. I mean, we've talked about this time and again with Daegu. That midfield just leaves acres of space for people to run into. We talked about this in the Gwangju game where they literally ran half the field before they were allowed to take a shot. I mean, that happened multiple times in that game with Gwangju just waltzing in and having as much space as they wanted. So to me, I think you've got to shift away from that 3-back because at this point it's just not working consistently enough, and either go with 4 at the back where it's so hard not to know your positions in a 4-back defensively. And like you say, Pete, they're young. So I think you get them in positions that are easier, more clearly defined, require less shifts, less communication, or you just go and get a lockdown 6 that can protect the back line no matter what formation you got back there. But I think that's a little bit harder. I think they could solve this with the squad that they have right now by not trying to be so clever with 3 at the back. Which, I mean, I'm never going to be a massive fan of 3 at the back anyway. So that's my solution.
Yeah, I think I'd agree both. Yeah, I agree with both of those. About more hedgehogs. Just more hedgehogs. That's what everybody wants. Anyway,
that's all you need.
Those other ideas are far more sensible. But are they as fun? Anyway, George Slade on Twitter, he comes in with, the Olympics were delayed and will be held next year, hopefully, in brackets. Mm-hmm. Are there any previously unfancied players who have impressed and could get in the squad due to delay? Are there any players that have now disappointed this season and might be left out of the squad? Anybody
that comes to mind for that second one, Matthew?
Yeah, I think we'd have to mention Cho Kyu-sung because he's had a bit of a bad time of it at John Book. And it's not due to lack of game time. It's just he's not been able to make the step up. Now, the thing is, the problem I have is I don't want to break up that under-23 team because I feel like they've kind of deserved to go there, but you also want to win it. So you might have to think about excluding it. But I also think with the under-23 team, they are greater than the sum of their parts. I'm going to make a more contentious comparison than Peter with his Daegu and Barnsley here, but they're a bit like England, like the recent England team. England's World Cup team in Russia was definitely there was a bit more of a spirit to it, a bit more than just the sum of its parts. There was a real camaraderie there. And I think that's kind of was with that under-23 team. And I'd feel a bit awkward about breaking some of that off. But for ones that should leave, probably Cho Kyu-sung, really.
Yeah, I mean, he just hasn't really clicked at a higher level, which I do think it's just a massive shame.
Sorry, there is a quick comment in from Daniel Croydon, and just for clarification, the squad who won that tournament, who were qualified for this year's Olympics, will still be qualified for next year's Olympics, as far as I understand it.
Yes, even though they will be overage, they're going to be allowed to play because it's not their fault that the Olympics were canceled. Basically, is what that comes down to.
It is a very small squad, though, isn't it? That they have to choose, isn't it? Is it 18?
Yeah, and then they've got to bring in wild cards as well. So that could also disrupt the flow because there'll be some Koreans who are overage out there who probably want military exemption. which the Olympics can bring. So
yeah, that's the only reason they would really be there.
Mm-hmm.
Pete, is there anybody that you would add or take away?
Look, sitting here in my Guangzhou shirt, I think it'd be quite remiss of me to not say Hwang Sang, who played in a couple of those big games at the end of the AFC Under-23 tournament, and he's developed so much in the last year from when he played in that, and he's one of those players that can change a game in a second with his pace. So I'd have him on the wing, and also another winger, Seongmin Kyu. I mean, wow, what a season! He got 6 or 7 goals. I don't know how you could overlook him, at least consider him.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's really difficult with such a smaller selection to choose from. And I think as well, one which will not be there, who was in that under-23 team, will be Songbom Kun. I don't see why they'd take him because he's already got exemption, but also
good point.
Maybe they want to keep a goalkeeper that helps them. That's also a difficult one to call, but
I think it'd be good experience for him just to keep getting these matches at high levels, because obviously he's playing for Jeonbuk, he's playing in Champions League, he's won championships, he went over and won the U23. I think keep him in these high stakes situations, because I think he's currently being groomed for the Korea #1, in my opinion. I think he's ready for it. He's had a little bit of a slump this year here and there, but overall I think he's fantastic. And like you were saying, I wouldn't want to take him away from being such a major part of that team gelling together.
Yeah, it's a very unenviable task that Kim Ak-bum has got ahead of him there. I think wouldn't want to be trying to axe some of these players.
No, just before you move on, I've noticed in the last few weeks, Kim Ak-bum and Paulo Bento in the same stadium a lot of the times, which seems to be happening more recently. Than they must be in conflab about maybe future squad selections.
I mean, I would hope they're working together all the time, because the success
attending the same games. That's what I mean.
Yeah, the success we've seen at the younger age brackets for Korea, I think you want to just keep that together and have it come up. So I think a lot of those players that are featuring for the U23 side need to be featuring for the senior squad sooner than later.
Yeah, they might just be really good mates.
Yeah, maybe they're really good buddies.
Just really good mates and share a night out and split the fuel. That's it. Anyway. But no, we do have another question that came in before the podcast. That was from Lex via Instagram. He was asking, does the pandemic teach fans that watching at home can be as exciting as well as leading to lower numbers next year?
I think that I'm taking that as like a two-parter. Watching at home can be exciting. I mean, I think this year that it has been pretty entertaining. I think there's been a very unfortunate combination this year. It just feels like it's been rubbed in so many ways, because the weather this year, I mean, the typhoons have been crazy this summer, but the weather the rest of this year has been gorgeous on the weekends here in Seoul specifically. Like, it was such a mild summer for the most part, perfect for a night out at the park. It's been great. And then we've seen so many high scoring, ridiculously fun matches this year. I mean, we see that every year, but I feel like, especially with the bounce back in attendance last year, we could have seen that grow. We could have seen that build. And that's really unfortunate. But I do think that the level of play and everything that's on the field has been entertaining at home. And I again, said this at the beginning of the year. My hope wasn't necessarily to try to convert fans in the 20, 30, 40 countries that it's being in. I mean, great if they want to come and watch. But I think for the longer term, we needed more Koreans and more people here in Korea to be into this league. And that's what I was hoping to see happen. And I think maybe it has, or am I just being too much of an optimist? Silence. I win.
I think you just don't want people to get used to watching on television,
Sure.
Thinking that football is a TV show. Because ultimately these clubs rely on the income of fans coming in and spending the hard-earned cash in the stadium.
But I mean, that just takes decent marketing, doesn't it? I mean, if the ratings are good and the ratings are up, then all that takes is just saying, hey, if you think this is good, come into the stands. And look, everybody's got their phone in their hand the entire game anyway. Get interactive with fans. Give them something to do during the match. Like, this is Korea. You can't convince me that that's hard to do, to have an app that people can interact with throughout the match. that's got to be done. Like, I think,
especially if it comes with some chicken and beer or a pizza, then people would be all over it. Yeah.
Are we talking about Goyang North End? Paul, are you back? Paul wanted the whole thing run through an app where you could order things to your seat from
Nearly got my vote on that, and I had a team in it. Anyway, I do believe that's almost it for the mailbag. I don't think there's been any more questions that have come in. So yeah, I think there we go.
Yeah, if you would like to have your questions included in the mailbag, you can get us on social, where you may be watching right now, at K-League United. That's on all of the social medias, although we're not on TikTok yet. I don't know. Pete,
still
do you
working
want
on my dances.
I was to say, Pete, are you gonna do TikTok for us? Just the fields of Gimjae?
Yeah, I could do a few rice field clips for you if you fancy.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Well, if you want to see Pete run the K-League United TikTok from Gimjae, just let us know. Otherwise, you can get at us on social, or you can email us info@K-League United, and we will get your questions into the mailbag. Also, if you'd like to become more involved in the site, please consider becoming a patron. Our Patreon subscribers get exclusive editorial pieces, full player interviews, podcast extras, including this week we'll have Paul's Korean football roundup, where it's a really quick little snackable bit, 3, 4, 5 minutes, where he goes over all the major news of the week in Korean football. So that'll be on Patreon this week. We also have K-League Survivor for some of us. I don't want to talk about it. Whatever. Are you still in it, Pete?
Yeah, I've still got my 1 life left. Yeah.
It's down. I think it's down to 3 writers and 3 patrons right now, right?
The post will be out later.
Out at the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, if you want to get involved in any of this and a lot more that's going on over there, tiers start as low as $1, and you can get involved, a little bit more involved, for $3 and $5. And those of you that have subscribed, we are trying to get kits out. It's just we can't mail everywhere right now. We're trying. We're going to keep trying. Sorry. And also, if you weren't able to watch this live on the social medias and you would like to listen to it live on the radio, you can do so every Thursday on Football Nation Radio in Australia. And if you subscribe to this podcast, wherever you download your podcast, you'll be entered into this month's K-League Kit Contest. And we are giving away an Idong-guk Jumbuk Hyundai Motors home kit. Matthew's not allowed to win it. He already has enough of them. So,
yeah. And plus, I don't want to jinx anymore. Don't want to jinx any more teams or players.
Yeah, so we won't allow him to have it, but that's going to be up for another couple of weeks. So if you want to get involved on social, or you can just leave us a review. But for now, for Matthew Binns and Pete Hampshire, I'm Ryan Walters. Thanks so much for listening.
정교성, 공복